I'm going to start critiquing for our first quote real project where I gave you guys some instruction, minimal instruction, and asked you to apply what you had learned and to do kind of whatever you wanted with it within some parameters. And so we're going to start with Irelia, see where things go. So I'm critiquing these just kind of like as I look at them at a first glance. I haven't previewed these because I'm just trying to keep this as natural as if I was actually critiquing in the class. So we'll just take a moment to read this. I did kind of read this part in advance, but let's see, trees. Okay, so these about the mesquite trees and the South Texas landscape. Um, she's so interested in compositions, the time of the day. Okay, very good. I'm gonna hope that everybody had enough time to look at this, and let's go on and take a look at the first picture. Dancing branches. Okay. Um, Yeah, I do think that this is an interesting composition. I like the way you're paying attention to line. Um, Really nice, very dynamic. Remember, we've talked about these diagonals and these very dynamic diagonal lines. The tree's got a tremendous amount of character. Um, I'm not sure that this exact photograph shows it off in its absolute most interesting point of view. I think it would be interesting to try a few different times of day and maybe a shallower depth of field. I'm finding some of this stuff in the background a little bit distracting. I think the important thing is there, and I think that where you have your camera and everything, this is a great breakup of negative space in here. There's just something about it that I think could use a little bit more uh, pizzazz, for lack of a better word. Um, and I'm thinking a lot of it just probably has to do with the time of day, and just the background being uninteresting, but not really neutral enough to not distract. And so, maybe if this was something that you tried on a tripod at dusk or something like that. And another thing to think about is, since you are kind of shooting um, on a sunny day, um, you know, I think that you're on the side of the tree that's getting shadow, and you can bring some of that out with some editing. But overall, it's looking to me more like it's metered for the background and not for the foreground. Now, this might be one that would be fun to try. I think I've got it scheduled for the last week of classes that I'm going to teach you guys HDR. If you want to try it in advance, you can certainly figure out how to. There's plenty of tutorials, but basically with HDR, what she would do is put her picture on her camera on a tripod and bracket several times. One metering for the sky, which will have the sky looking right, but the trees underexposed. Another metering for the tree, which is going to make the trees nice and bright, but the sky will be blown out. And a few kind of steps in the middle. And then the high dynamic range, just you select the photographs that you want it to merge, and you just tell it auto merge, and it is able to kind of line everything up, and it does most of the thinking for you, and pulls out the properly exposed areas. And that's sometimes they look a little bit fakey, but that's how they get those really slick looking um, commercial pictures that you see in all the fancy magazines. And I think that that's the kind of something that there's, even though this is a great composition, I think there's just something a little bit more that it could use, just something to kind of spice things up a bit. Okay. And this one, the same thing. Fantastic composition, really, really, really interesting texture and line work here in the foreground. Again, I think that the sky seems a bit blown out, and there is an awful lot of wonderful, wonderful stuff happening in here that is not getting the attention it deserves. I can see actually going in and doing some selective editing on this, and maybe bringing out some highlights in this area with a brush tool, either dodging or um, masking or something. And a lot of times, if you can get the sky a little darker, even a little bit darker than it naturally is, it can create a little bit of drama. And this is like the difference between, to me, this is a picture that has a lot of potential, is almost there, but isn't fully taking advantage of everything it has to offer. Now let me go ahead and point out the things that are really working, and why I would recommend that this one is definitely worth going back and working on some more. The first one, um, I would reshoot that one. This one, I think that you can work on it. But here's what I'm really drawn to. Look at the way she's been paying attention to her negative space. These are some design elements that we talk about in the class. Repetition is one, and one thing I'm really liking is the way this arc, and this arc all kind of mirror each other, and she's got two almost identical pieces of negative space here. It seems very, very balanced. I like this area right down here. And then a nice big piece of negative space here that then has all this delicate little, linear, kind of almost like a filigree type thing. And I think this one is fantastic. And another thing that might be fun to try on this one, maybe it doesn't need the color. Maybe the color is distracting. What if you took this one and played around with it in black and white mode and see what happens? Because I really think this one is worth doing something with. But again, it doesn't quite take the prize just yet. Okay, so let's see. Um, and then this one again, it's a fine composition. In terms of visual interest, nothing compares to this one so far. I mean, this is what we would call the money shot. So I guess another thing I'm thinking is that, and this is something I find in my own photography a lot of times as well, the closer you get, the better, the more you crop out, um, the more interesting it is. Part of the reason that we are intrigued with this one is because there's a lot that she's not telling us. In this one, it's nice. I would probably say for it to feel a little bit more balanced, I'm feeling like maybe the shadows over here and the background over here are more interesting. I appreciate that you're using some plain empty space areas up here for the sky and down here. But I think you can probably afford to lose a little bit of that. I would want to keep these two trees here, but what if you took your camera and moved it to the right so that maybe we lost about that much, where I'm kind of making a line here on this side, and gain that much over here, so that we've got, or maybe even a little bit more, so that we've got room to really take advantage of these of these shadows here. So I think, yes, I appreciate that you're applying the rule of thirds, but keeping in mind that I think you would still, even if you move the camera laterally, you're still breaking it up into the horizontal rule of thirds. And perhaps what it would just mean then is that instead of maybe the two big trees right here could be the 1/3, and then everything happening over to the right could be the 2/3. That's just a thought. Yeah, and then this one I would kind of say is similar to the first one, in that the tree in and of itself is a fantastic subject. It's just that the time of day is too the background, there's excuse me, there's something that we always say in design: if it's not adding to it, it's taking away from it. And that's kind of what I would say about the background in this. I'm finding this fence very distracting. The fence is getting all the light. The tree's getting some of the light, but honestly, I think this is the kind of thing that, if you come back during that quote magic golden hour, whatever it's called, when the sun is lower in the sky, um, or on a cloudy day, I would really encourage you to go back out there and keep doing this. I think that this is a great start for an idea. I don't think that you have fully realized your idea yet. I mean, because I think you've got the workings of, what could be a really nice, little photo essay. But, so far I would say, these three are kind of missing it. Now, this one again, this I would have to say is probably your strongest one. Let's just compare this one and this one. And these two seem to go together, right? Don't they? I mean, don't these two seem like, I could see you doing a whole series. I could see you doing all five, just kind of with this aesthetic where you're kind of zoomed in and cropping out a lot. You're really playing up what that tree has to offer a lot more when you just cut out the background. Now, this one, your sky looks great. Your sky is not blown out on this one. You've got this really wonderful, rich, deep blue, which sometimes through editing you can actually exaggerate that a little bit, or you can even make that happen, in a place where the sky looks a little bit weak. There's some editing techniques that you can do. I also think that this one would be worth going back into. There's a lot of beautiful texture happening here on the tree, and that's what we're drawn to about these mesquite trees. It's all about line and texture, and I think you've got a great eye for that. And a really, when you're coming in and cropping out, a really good eye for breaking up the negative space. So I think this is definitely the strongest one so far. And I like this one also because, again, maybe it doesn't quite have the dynamic quality that this one and this one have. It's not as complex, because you don't have any sky, and you've got a much shallower space that you're dealing with. But this one, kind of on a story or a psychological, I love that you title it Leaf Solo. I mean, it almost becomes a narrative. Um, it's so subtle, and there's just something kind of poignant. There's something kind of poetic about this leaf that just kind of happened to find its way into this little hole. I do wish that this would be super easy fix, but I really think that you should mask out this leaf and punch up that saturation just a bit. I think that you've got an incredible focal point right here that, it's just not quite fully reaching its potential yet. But let's see, are there any more in the series? That would be my suggestion to you then, of the series. This one, this one, and this one are by far the strongest ones. I would even say, if you go back out there, don't even bother reshooting this one when you know that you're going to get something more interesting if you try something like this. I would also like to see what happens with these in black and white. It would be kind of interesting maybe to even have side by side, like a black and white and a color version of the same one. But if you are trying to pull together a portfolio, those three I think have portfolio potential. But I would want you to do a little bit more work on them. So let's kind of give that some thought. And maybe we'll have a final portfolio at the end of the semester. And maybe what we can do is kind of select 2 or 3 of these to edit a little bit more, and include in a final portfolio. So let's see. I'll take a look at the conclusion here real quick. And is this Yeah. Okay. I'm realizing now that maybe a lot of what you did, composition wise, was done in the cropping phase, which is great. Okay, but remember, the more pixels you have, the better. And if you can be thinking about that composition while you're looking through the camera, and and keeping cropping to a minimum, because then you're just throwing away perfectly good pixels that could be going towards texture and um, clarity and things like that. I would recommend that, and I would also recommend, we're using Lightroom and Photoshop for a reason, and that is because we can enhance. It's very, very rare that we take a picture that just comes out reaching its full potential without having to touch it at all in the editing. And so I'm going to strongly encourage you to to go back in, and if you're not quite comfortable yet, you just need to practice. And the beauty is that as long as you've got that raw file, you can never mess anything up. You can always go back to the beginning if you mess something up. And just also, I'm recognizing you did go at midday, and I would say that was probably there would probably be a better time of day to do that. So, but anyway, I think you did a great job. I really want to commend you for those three that are just kind of almost there. And I want to be very encouraging that I think that is a good starting point. For exploring some more. Okay, so nice work.